Penny Candy.
Hello and welcome to Soul Ranked here on Penny Candy. I am, of course, your host, Damian Nova. And today on Soul Ranked, we will be ranking all of Anita Baker's albums. Like in the last video with En Vogue, I explained the rules of this. Won't be doing any compilation albums, remix albums, although a remix album by Anita Baker I think we deserve. I also won't be doing imports or indie releases or anything like that. We'll be just doing full-length albums by Anita Baker from the years that they were released. Now, this list was very complicated to compile. Not because she has a lot of work, but because Anita Baker doesn't have a bad album. There is not one bad album by Anita Baker. Please understand that everything I say is in love, because there is not one bad Anita Baker album. I have listened to them. I have absorbed all of them. Some of them I had to listen to again, and none of them are bad. None of them are bad. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell, and let's get to this list. At number 7, I have The Songstress from 1983. Now, 1983 seems like late for Anita Baker. I know a lot of people are thinking, didn't her first album come out in the 70s? It did not. I just feel like she had been around already, and maybe because of the group that she was in before Chapter 8, which is also not going to show up on this list, but maybe because the group she was in before with Chapter 8, it just felt like we knew her already. We knew her voice in some capacity. The same can be said about Rochelle Farrell. Rochelle Farrell was working with George Duke before her first album came out, and we recognized her voice. We knew who she was. So when she put out her first album, it's a hodgepodge. God, it's the jambalaya of her projects. She tried a couple things. Some stuff she stuck with, a lot of it she didn't. The first single, of course, being Angel, I think it's kind of the only single from that record. If it's not, please correct me below. Angel is the most notable single from that record. It has been redone, resung, covered, uncovered, recovered.
My angel. Oh, angel.
I love the way you touch me. I love the way it feels.
But it is the tentpole of the album. There's no song on it called The Songstress, you know. I mean, it's a good record. It's good. These, like I said, these records are going to go from good to genius. This album's good. Again, it's a little experimental after the group that she was in. You can hear the experimentation, especially on songs like Squeeze Me, which is a full disco song.
Squeeze me.
And when you're trying to compete with people like, I don't know, Shaka fucking Khan, and you know, a number of other people that were still creating this type of music back then, the Gap Band, Parliament, you know, they were still creating disco and funk, and Anita Baker had to fall into that. I recommend The Songstress. I recommend you find it. Most of her music is expensive on vinyl. You can find the really popular albums for cheap, but stuff like The Songstress, which is considered obscure because it's her first album, it's gonna run you like $50 to $80 to get it on a used vinyl. Of course, I suggest Angel, Feel the Need, and Squeeze Me. Also suggest Sometimes is a really solid R&B song. Again, there's nothing wildly notable about this other than Squeeze Me and Angel. Everything else sounds kind of similar. I think it's great background music. I think it's great music for cleaning the house. At number 6, I have My Everything from 2004. This was her last full-length project that wasn't a Christmas album. her last real record, as far as I'm concerned. Because like I said in the last thing, I don't acknowledge Christmas records. Of course, In Vogue's Christmas album is atrocious. I really appreciated My Everything mainly because it was a return to form for Anita Baker. It does not live up to the albums that came before it, quite honestly. I think it falls somewhere with the songstress in that it's good. There's nothing great about it though. It's a oh well, Anita, this is the type of music Anita Baker does. And in 2004, I think we expected a little bit more modernity from her. There was nothing modern about this record, except for like one or two songs. The rest of the album sounds like Anita Baker old hat. It's fine, and it has really good songs on it. It has good songs on it. I don't know why I said really good. It's good music. There's not one moment where I'm sitting there like, oof, this is rough. It's all good. But in 2004, what does the world expect from Anita Baker? This is not somebody who has moved with the times in a way that would suggest that her next move was going to be working with Darkchild. She didn't do a ton of collabing. She worked pretty much with the same guy that produced Chapter 8 for most of her records. This album was produced by Babyface and David Eastman. Which is odd because she's not on the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack. I think that was one of the glaring omissions from the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack, and it could have been because Anita was working on a record or whatever. But I just felt it was odd that she wasn't on that record. So I feel like this is Babyface's way of fixing that. Here's the problem though. Babyface in 2004, as genius and as brilliant as Babyface is, though still making a few hits here and there, had gone stale a little bit. And I think he had realized that. So he was working with other artists trying to create a new sound. What happened with Anita Baker was he seemed to fall back. The lead single, you know, I don't know, it was fine. The video was fine. Everything about it was fine. There was nothing spectacular about it though.
Gotta know that I want you, baby. Gotta know that I need you, darling. I just wanna say it's for you. My everything. Like in all the songs I sing of happiness and joy you bring. I just wanna say it's for you. My everything.
Nothing groundbreaking about this R&B record. It was very much a R&B record. And it was a kind of a throwback. It was like an early 90s throwback, with the exception of a couple songs. One of those songs is Close Your Eyes. Close Your Eyes is the most modern song on the record. It's not heavily modern.
Close your eyes and see. Life's no mystery. Ooh, your dream.
That syncopation that everybody was sort of doing with like Timbaland and Darkchild and Neptunes and everything at the time. But it still sounds like old Anita Baker. It's a good song. Listen, I'm not shitting on this album. It's a good album. It's just in 2004, I don't know, it didn't seem to fit with everything that was going on. This is post Neo Soul, which would have been a great fit for Anita Baker, something real laid back. This is after Jill Scott. Neo Soul is to R&B what bebop was to jazz. You know what I mean? So I feel like Anita Baker sat already in that jazz market, and while My Everything has jazz moments, it is still very much a purely R&B record with mostly just grooves on it. I do recommend the duet with Babyface like you used to. Actually, I recommend the entire second half of this record. So again, I gotta look at my notes here. Close Your Eyes, You're My Everything Revisited is a bebop version of the lead single, which is a better version of the lead single. And I Can't Sleep. I Can't Sleep is brilliant. I think it's one of the better songs on the album. I hope you can find this music out there because My Everything is a good listen. It's not her best work though. Okay. Okay. Number 5. A Christmas Fantasy. Now, listen, like I said, I don't like Christmas music. As a matter of fact, I abhor it. I really dislike it. Like I said, I like choral Christmas music, but that's kind of it. This album is really good. This album is like saying all that. This album is really fucking good. I didn't know this album existed, so while making this list, I had to listen to it. And it would be higher if it wasn't a Christmas album. They took a lot of elements from like 50s and 60s jazz and put it on this thing. It is not a reimagining R&B version of these Christmas songs. It is a jazzed up Quincy Jones style Miles Davis, like it is a throwback. Anita Baker is one of the best scatter of the 20th century, and this is where we actually get to hear her do all that. This one has probably been underappreciated. It was released on Blue Note. Blue Note has a tendency to just put their artist albums out and do nothing else with it. If you like Christmas music, this is the album for you. Really, it is a great Christmas album. This is coming from somebody who does not like Christmas music. Okay, I don't like it. I don't like Christmas music. I think it's corny. I think it's baby music. I hate it. So, you know, for me, for this person to tell you that this is a good, solid Christmas album that you can put on, and it's smooth Christmas. It's not really aggressive Christmas music. It's the Christmas music you can put on while trimming your tree or like sitting in front of a fire. It is that music. It is the sitting in front of the fire, roasting chestnuts with your loved ones. It is that album. It is fantastic. I wish I could find it on a vinyl because I would actually have this on vinyl. This is not bad. This is not bad. I recommend her version of My Favorite Things, which, to be honest, I did not realize had been grandfathered into being a Christmas song, considering it came from The Sound of Music. Did not realize it had become a Christmas song. I don't know who did that. Her version of My Favorite Things is spectacular. And my favorite version of that is by Betty Carter, who is one of the... I'm inspired every time I hear Betty Carter sing. And Anita Baker really laid this the fuck out. Okay? It's laid out.
Raindrops on the roses and the whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and the warm woodland mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things. Yeah.
Also, the title song, Christmas Fantasy, not terrible. A really solid R&B Christmas song. Nothing about it makes me uncomfortable or pissy or anything. Like I'm not upset by this song. Then there's a juke joint style version of Frosty the Snowman called Frosty's Rag. I think this was released as a single. It's kind of brilliant.
Frosty the Snowman, he's a jolly happy soul. Got a corncob pipe, cute.
Also, Christmas Time Is Here. It's good. It's good. Her version of Christmas Time Is Here is great. There are a couple of songs on there I can skip because Christmas, but I can't hate this record. I can't. It's actually pretty good. Moving through this fast. At number 4, I have Giving You the Best That I Got. Part of the reason it's at number 4 is because of that fucking title. I hate that title. Giving You the Best That I Got. That's 8 words. 8 words. I digress. a solid R&B record that was very popular and was considered a pop album. I don't know if I consider giving you the best, giving you the best that I got. We're just gonna call it giving you from here on out. A pop album? I don't know. It crossed over. It hit a couple pop charts, and it sort of put a new perspective on pop and R&B, because at the time, pop was considered, unless it was Michael Jackson or Prince, it was well, even with Prince sometimes, it was considered by the black community as selling out. So Dionne Warwick went through this.
Were you ever accused of something that I've heard many times,
yeah.
copping out and not being
You're not
black enough?
Yeah.
I love the enough part. I don't know what I...
Definitely, you know, and I usually say, well, I look in the mirror every day and I know what I see.
That's black.
You know.
Patti LaBelle went through this, Whitney Houston went through this, and I think with Anita Baker, because she had already solidified herself in jazz and R&B since the early 80s, putting out an album in 1990 that crosses over to the pop charts didn't deter the black people from buying this record. Is it a pop album? It's a popular album, and I think that's where the word comes from. I think people consider pop music a specific sound, and I guess you can subjectively, but at the end of the day, pop stands for popular. That's all it stands for. So, considering this was a popular record, it's fine. It's good. It's good. It's good. Again, like I said, the Christmas album would have been higher than this had it not been a Christmas album. Giving You the Best That I Got is something that my mom played on repeat. This was an album that was in our household all the time. Ad nauseum. There was no mistaking this record. We knew every song. We knew every lyric. Anita Baker was one of the few people that me and my mom would sit and read the lyrics so we would know what she was saying. Those are special moments to me. And I feel like this album holds a special place in my heart because of that. I don't love every song on it, right? But I do appreciate the album's ability to hold my attention and keep me focused. Anita Baker is singing maybe close to perfect on this record, whereas on the songstress she sounds unsure. On this, she's 100% certain about who she is, and vocally she's astounding. The music is great, the production is fine.
Your love is so strong and so unselfishly, and I made a vow, so I tell you now I'm giving you the best that I got, baby. Yes, I made a vow, so I tell you now I'm giving you the best that I got, honey.
This was produced by Michael J. Powell, the guy who was pretty much the producer of Chapter 8. So, you know, it solidified the Anita Baker sound, and I think it sort of I think it always sort of landed right between popular soul music and obscure R&B. That there's something very special about Anita Baker where she can land pretty safely between the two. A lot of people would compare her to Sade in that sense, but I would never say Sade is R&B. That's just, I think she has a jazzy voice, but Sade's music feels a lot more like rock to me, definitely European rock. Whereas, I don't know, I feel like Anita Baker falls very safely, and I think that's why this album did so well. Of course, I would recommend the title track. Giving You the Best That I Got is one of the greatest R&B songs ever written, and Anita Baker shows her ass on that song. I would also recommend Lead Me to Love and Good Love. There's a lot of love. It's a love record. Okay, villagers, put your torches away. Put your torches away. And number 3, I have Rapture. What? Rapture, to a lot of people, is top tier Anita Baker. It is the album that they mama played, it's the album that they played, it's the album that they remixed and played in the clubs. I think that's great. I think that's great. I do not think it's her greatest album. After re-listening to a lot of this, it's not her greatest album. It's not. Again, greatest is subjective, but in my ears, it did not hit my ears the way the next top two did. It is a classic R&B record. This is an album that every black person owns. This was her crossover hit. This is when the white people had started to realize who Anita Baker was. By the time Anita Baker came out with this, when was this? By the time, 1986, okay? This is post-Thriller. This is post I Feel For You. This is post Purple Rain. You know what I mean? Like, this album was able to hold its own in a climate after What's Love Got to Do with it? To a lot of people, they would consider this album Anita Baker's opus. This is a perfect album and all that. I do believe it's perfect. I don't believe it's her best. And I know that's wild. That is that is a wild thing to say. After I said it out of my mouth, I realized how wild it is to say that. This is why this list was so hard, because trying to understand some of these artists putting out classic work and still saying it's number 3 on my list, it's probably blowing some of your heads off. Listen, I love Rapture. We played this album into the ground. Into the ground. Again, this was another album where we were listening to it and we would read the liner notes, we would read the lyrics, and me and my mother really sat with this album, with the LP, and really, really absorbed Rapture. It has one of my favorite songs by her, Been So Long, on it, and I, of course, recommend it. And not even one of my favorite songs by her. It's actually one of my favorite songs, period. I love Been So Long. I sing it at karaoke, I sing it at open mics. I think it's a great record, but I don't think she had fallen really into who she was vocally yet. Her scatting is kind of weird. It gets into the rubba-dubba, hubba-bubba. It's not great. We discover who Anita Baker is through this record. It's a great lead single with Sweet Love. Sweet Love has a great video. It's a beautiful video. And this is also a moment where you start realizing that Anita Baker's writing falls into sort of the Oleta Adams, Gladys Knight sort of writing, where it's heavily Christian based. A lot of times she's talking about God and Jesus, not about a man, which is it's sneaky.
Pretty sneaky, sis.
Of course, I said I recommend Been So Long. I also recommend You Bring Me Joy and Mystery and Sweet Love. It's a great record. Again, it's perfect, but it's not her best.
What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
At number 2, I have Compositions from 1990. I misquoted giving you the best as coming out in 1990. That was 88, which still, late 80s, early 90s. There's not much of a difference between 1988 and 1990. Listen, Compositions is not only a great R&B record, it's a great jazz album. This is Anita Baker at her most jazzy outside of that Christmas album, and the writing on this record is astounding. Some of the lyrics and some of the emotion and power she puts behind some of these songs on Compositions, it's like she sat down at a piano and just bared her entire soul, and it is phenomenal.
I wonder what would happen if you would trust in me. I'd make you believe, I'd make you see. No need to run from me.
Oh man, this album is so good. And for a long time, this was my favorite Anita Baker album until I get to number one. But it was it was my favorite Anita Baker album. I have bought at least 10 copies of it, from playing it to death on tape, playing it to death on vinyl, playing it to death on CD. And the album is, again, perfect. It's a perfect record. I think of songs like Love You to the Letter and More Than You Know, and the chord structures and the way she creates the lyricism with the chord structures on this album is just, it makes your heart melt. It's whew, I'm gushing because I really, really enjoyed this record. And she should be exceptionally proud of it. It didn't do as well as the other albums on this list, and rightfully so. It is, again, the bebop version of Anita Baker. It is the obscure type jazz version of Anita Baker. It's definitely a staple within the community. People who love R&B love this record. People who love Anita Baker love this record. I think the consensus across the board is that Compositions is Anita Baker's most focused, beautifully written, beautifully recorded. The mix on this fucking album, my God. I recommend Love You to the Letter, Soul Inspiration, Whatever It Takes. These songs make me sweat. It's hot here. It's like 90 degrees right now. I'm trying to record a video at 90 degrees. And at number one, Rhythm of Love from 1994. This might be an easy pick for some people. You might be like, oh, of course you like that record because you're a part of that age group. You're Gen X, so of course you like that record. Listen, album is unfuck-withable. There is not one dud on Rhythm of Love. From the moment she opens her mouth to speak, which is something we never heard her do. This was, of course, post Toni Braxton. So, and Shantae Moore and Janet Jackson. So speaking a little bit, if you had a little soft, sexy voice, was money. And Anita Baker understood that. She understood the assignment. She gave us a little sonnet, a little poem at the beginning.
This old world, it just keeps on spinning around and around. And, sometimes it just spins too fast and you not only lose your balance, but you lose your rhythm. And
it sets the tone for the entire album. This album is amazing. If you are not familiar with Anita Baker, this is where you start. I apologize. I mean,
operator, get my baby on the line. Just the other night, we had a horrible fight. I admit that I was out of control because I still love my man with my body and soul.
the yearning she has in her voice on that song. Oh my God. Body and Soul, forget about it. One of the best vocal performances on any song ever. If you try to sing Body and Soul, prepare to sweat.
Every day is getting better. More than I trust, I feel stronger. This brings me closer. It feels good to love you and is there any doubt in your mind? Oh yes. Tell me, baby. Tell me, darling. Love my soul, Lord. Just love me, darling.
That song is a beast. A lot of the songs on this album are beastly. They said, Anita Baker, you ready to sing? She said, yes I am. She sings her face off on this album. From top to bottom, there is nothing wrong, nothing. There is not a dud, not one song on this album, on this very lengthy album, by the way. This is her longest album to date. This is one of those albums that, yes, you can play it in the background, but this is also one of those albums to sit with a bottle of wine and just absorb it. Just absorb it, because it is perfection personified. If you are an R&B fan and you are a fan of soul music, Rhythm of Love is the quintessential Anita Baker album. It spans everything from pop and R&B and jazz and a little tinge of rock and roll in there to hard, heavy-hitting, big ballads and bebop. Like, what? No filler songs. None. None. Not one skippable song. Not one. It is perfect. It is top tier Anita Baker. I'm gonna stop gushing. I'm gonna stop gushing. I'm gonna stop. I suggest Plenty of Room. I suggest Baby. Baby is, I played Baby to death. That is my favorite song on this album. I suggest Rhythm of Love. I suggest Body and Soul. I suggest I Apologize. I suggest her version of My Funny Valentine. I suggest the whole thing. I suggest the whole thing. Buy Rhythm of Love. Support Anita Baker, please, because I don't know what's going on. I don't know why she hasn't recorded an album since 2005, but she has given us beautiful live performances. Her live shows are amazing and they're class acts. That is one thing Anita Baker is, if nothing else. Anita Baker is a class act, and she is going to sound exactly like she sounds on the record. There is not one moment where you don't realize that bitch sounds exactly like the record, and then add stuff. That is the mark of an exceptional singer and an exceptional performer. That is why people like Layla Hathaway and Jasmine Sullivan and Chrisette Michele and Michelle Ndegeocello, they really look up to Anita, and they are trying to do what she has done, what she has created, this body of work that I have done nothing but gush over. It's hard to hate anything Anita Baker does. Even with the low tier stuff, it's still good. It's still listenable. Find Anita Baker's work. Follow her on Instagram. She's always posting stuff. She's pretty active on the internet. So keep up with her. See what she's up to. Again, this has been Soul Ranked. I'm Damian Nova. Follow, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Hit the bell, and I'll holler at you next time.
Penny candy.